Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of the Ritchie-Reiersen Immigration and Injury Podcast. I am Alan Aguilar. I'm hosting this, and with us we have Brandon Ritchie, the famous attorney from Washington. Maybe some of you guys around
Famous.
town have seen him walking around, or maybe he's dealt with your guys' cases personally. Today we're going to be talking about slip and fall injury cases in the Washington area, a little bit about Brandon's experience with some of those cases, some of the difficulties with those cases, and how Ritchie-Reiersen injury attorneys can kind of help you push your case from, a lot of stalling, negotiation, and pushing it into settlement. So thank you for joining us again, Richie. I know last week we kind of went into personal injury, so I'm excited to kind of dive into more niche topics that can help people.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So I kind of just wanted to get started off real simple. I think people kind of joke about slip and falls. I think when we think about car accidents, truck accidents, and some of the other cases that you take, slip and fall might not be something that many attorneys or maybe many people even think can turn into a case. Some people might think they
Yeah.
trip and then like, oh, well, I just got hurt, it's fine, and they kind of continue with their day.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain the nuances to slip and fall cases and kind of a little bit about what I said, where some people might think it was just a clumsy accident, and
Yeah.
how
Well, yeah.
differentiate between a real case?
Well, and the truth is, slip and fall accidents, and particularly in Washington State, they are some of the most difficult cases. In fact, most of my colleagues, I know a lot of personal injury attorneys won't even touch them, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Um, but they are more difficult. I mean, frankly, we try to be pretty specific on which ones we take, just because the very same reasons you just mentioned that they're hard. So typically slip and fall. You're at a grocery store, you're at Walmart, you're at parking lot, whatever, and for whatever reason you slip on something, you fall, you get hurt. Now, just because you fall at a store or fall somewhere else doesn't mean you have a case, right? Doesn't mean you're going to win. Doesn't mean that it's the store's fault. But it could, and so that's where we got to kind of figure out: is this a real case? Is it not a case? And and honestly, a lot of times it is worth talking to an attorney or at least somebody look at it. But yeah, they're tricky. We've done a lot of these. I've had a lot of success in these. We just had a seven-figure settlement actually from kind of a unique slip and fall. It was actually at an apartment complex and construction kind of stuff. And there was, unfortunately, like at the apartment complex, there was some metal rebar sticking up. And anyways, terrible case, terrible injuries. But we were able to prove, that they were at fault because they knew or should have known about this danger. And it was likely that they allowed their tenants to walk around and had been there for a while. And anyways, great settlement. We've had settlements where kind of follow the same category at apartment complexes. So I was walking up the stairs and the stairs kind of collapse and, very serious injuries. With that being said, I've had a lot of these too, where somebody falls at Walmart, not real hurt that bad. And yeah, we get them a little settlement, but we still help them with that stuff. So anyways, happy to dive into this. Happy to get into a little bit too called contributory negligence, which is a big deal in Washington State. But yeah, dive into this. What questions you have? I want to answer any questions so people know what could be a case, what's not a case. What do we look for?
And I think kind of going back to your you know, store analogy or your store example, I think that's a kind of a good one to kind of dive into and kind of dissect as to far as how a slip and fall actually turns into a case. And I know a lot of times there's like kind of like what you said, there's a lot of nuances, right? There might be rebar sticking out. Sometimes it might not be as clear cut, kind of like what you're saying. Maybe Walmart or one of these places had a banana peel or something left on the floor. Can you kind of explain to the viewers at home how exactly what you were saying, contributory negligence and just
Yeah,
negligence in general leads to that, right? Maybe the rebar was just left out there yesterday versus it having been out there for a week, 2 weeks now. Can you kind of
right.
explain how that might kind of turn
Yeah,
the case a different tide?
yeah. All those things come into play. Every case is so different. You got to take every case. But for instance, Walmart. Um, if you're walking down Walmart and there's a grape on the floor and you slip on a grape and you get hurt. Now, is it Walmart's fault? Maybe, but there's a lot of things you have to be able. We have to look at different cases, right? Like we have to figure out how long was that grape on the floor? Was it one tiny grape or was it a whole bunch of grapes? Um, had that fallen 10 seconds ago, there's no way Walmart and police could even had a chance to clean it up, right? Um, and so, but had it been sitting there for 30 minutes and a bunch of grapes and a bunch of people have gone through it and three different employees knew about it and didn't do anything about it, that makes a big difference too. So it kind of depends on, um, how long it's been there, how big a mess it is, did they know about it, or at least should have they known about it? Could have they corrected it, even if they didn't? So all those things come into play. Now, contributory negligence, what that is, that means even if a store, whatever grocery store, whatever, um, even if they messed up, even if they should have fixed it but they didn't, in Washington State, they can also come back to you as a person and been like, well, yes, they could have cleaned it up, but you still have eyes and you still walk and you're familiar with, walking around. So could have or should have you been able to see, hey, don't walk there, or hey, there's a big what sign that you got to notice that. And so they could also say, well, yeah, they should have fixed it, but you should have also seen it. So we're only going to say maybe 50-50 or 70-30 or whatever. Now, as the plaintiff, as the person is injured, and as your attorney, it's our job to prove all this stuff, right? So they're never going to say, "Oh yeah, we'll just accept it's our job to prove you should have known, or you it was really bad, or anyways, up to us." Yeah, every case is so different, but you got to take all of that into consideration.
So when you take something like a car, truck, maybe even a motorcycle accident, where they're a little more clear cut, what kind of like separates the difference between how you handle one of those, right? You get the car accident, you know the time, date, party at fault, you have the insurance information, photos, medical records, and everything, versus a case where someone comes to you and says, hey, I got injured. I was walking down my apartment, I tripped on some rebar, and you kind of
Um,
see how this is going to be a lot more of an uphill than some of those car accident. And how do you kind of approach that?
No, that's nice. No, honestly, a car accident's way easier in the sense of usually the police came. Usually the police have a police report. Like you have a professional investigator who essentially kind of says, here's what I think happened. Um, Pictures, you have insurance company. It tells us, hey, here's Geico or here's State Farm. And so we know what insurance we're dealing with. A slip and fall, premise liability kind of situations, almost never is there police. So there's no investigator, no report. Now, sometimes you feel like an incident report, but usually what they do, and these grocery stores do this on purpose, they have you fill out the details, but they never themselves like have their employee write down what the employee saw because they don't want a witness. You know what I mean? Um, Sometimes you do have video, which is really nice, like inside of a grocery store or like that, video footage. But the problem is if you don't get that video footage within 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, a lot of times they record over it. So you've got to send them very quickly, something telling them to preserve that, to give it to you. But it's so hard because here's the biggest problem. These guys don't want to give you their insurance information. Like at an apartment complex, like, do you think you can just call the owner and be like, hey, give me your insurance information? Somebody's hurt. They're gonna either ignore you or they're gonna like be like, no. Um, or now you're dealing with a small apartment complex owner who doesn't really have a clue what to do. It's not like dealing with State Farm or so. Anyways, there's a million different insurance companies. Um, so yeah, it's a lot more complicated. Um, but that's why it's really important to get an attorney who kind of has some experience in what they're doing. Now, for us, we've done enough of these. Like, I know if I'm going against Walmart, here's my contacts there. Here's the steps I need to do. But if I'm going against some other stores, it's like, man, we're gonna fight this one tooth and nail. Movie theaters, all these things. It's pretty tricky, but yeah. So yeah, it's a battle. But yeah, you got to be pretty selective, and you got to know what you're doing.
Right, right. And for some of our viewers at home, I would say that kind of kind of like what we talked about in the beginning, where maybe some people might not even realize they might have fell, tripped, sprained their ankle somewhere, and they kind of just move on the next day and chalk it up to, oh yeah, it was an accident. I did that.
Mhm.
What advice could you give to some people, and what seed can you plant in their mind where, hey, if you do get hurt in some kind of slip and fall case where you do sprain your ankle, kind of like a car accident, what are some of the things that they should look for? Like obviously in a car
Yeah.
accident, everyone knows take pictures, collect insurance,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
do all that. I feel like the process is a little more murky for slip and fall and some of these other accident case types. Like, what advice would
Yeah.
you give them to like understand what they need to collect? And ideally, if they did get injured, help them position their case in a strong manner.
Yeah. Here's the candid truth. You're in the grocery store and you slip on something, you fall down. That's embarrassing, right? So, 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 I mean, you're falling, you're probably crap all, who knows, right? So, number one, you're going to be embarrassed, but you just got to realize, like, hey, this happens. So, don't just, I mean, your natural instinct is going to be, I'm okay, run away, go, get out of there. I mean, because it's embarrassing. But, I mean, frankly, you gotta just realize, hey, I'm hurt or I fell. I need to look around and see, was this like I'm gonna be if I'm injured, like I'm gonna have to pay for this unless I can figure out a way to make these guys pay for it, right? You got to just comprehend. Like first thing needs to be don't just run away. Don't just. I know it's embarrassing. I know people are like, but like just like you said, I mean, not a bad idea. Make sure you're okay. Obviously, if you need medical attention, get that. But yeah, take some pictures. If there's any witnesses around, like the easiest thing, you got your phone, like record them. You know what I mean? Like it's so much better to have them on video or at least somehow like get their number right. Uh, Pictures, video, all that stuff. Because once again, it's up to you to prove that it's Now if you're at the grocery store and you slip on some great, look around. Is there a bunch of other crap on the floor? Are these guys like really messy? And so that proves like, hey, these guys haven't cleaned up in a while. And so anything you can do if you're with somebody, you know, have them do that. But anyways, the biggest thing we find is most people just run away. Secondly, it is so not important. I mean, it's not vital, but it helps so much if you go and do like an incident report. Make sure that because I half the time we get these calls like, yeah, we didn't even tell the store it was like embarrassing we left, but like I'm hurt now. But like if you put them on the do incident report, at least that way we know. And what that really does is it triggers them to store like the video footage. If they don't even know about it, they just anyways. So yeah, make a report. If you're hurt bad, call an ambulance. I'm not saying play that game up, but like if you need an ambulance, get an ambulance. If you need medical attention, get medical attention. But don't just be embarrassed and run away. That's what we find the most is people are just embarrassed. And they come to us 2 weeks later. Hey, I fell. It's like, did you tell anybody? Do you have any pictures? No, I was embarrassed. That makes it really, really hard for us.
Yeah, I really like what you said there. I think a lot of it sometimes, the onus is on us to build up the case. I know th people might not think that way. I really like kind of if some of the viewers can take what Mr. Ritchie said to heart in terms of filing the incident report. I think documentation is probably one of always the most important things. Kind of like what he's saying, it gives Mr. Ritchie the chance to go back to that store, to have a date, a time, maybe some people who are the point of contact with the injured victim. It gives him a chance to thoroughly investigate the situation. And that kind of goes into exactly what he's saying. If the situation can't be thoroughly investigated, if you're embarrassed and you run away, if you don't act proactively and reach out to the store manager and say, hey, X, Y, and Z happened. Can I get this documented? It will make Mr. Ritchie's job exponentially much harder. It will probably significantly hinder your ability to settle the case
Yeah.
for a reasonable amount that you feel. And exactly kind of what he's saying, if you are injured, if you do feel like this was could have been avoided, take onus and be proactive in taking those pictures. Exactly what he said. You have your phone, take down those contacts. All these things will go into making Mr. Ritchie's job significantly easier and pushing your settlement to the figures that you might want it. Because there are a lot of laws out in Washington, and here we're in California. There's a lot of laws out on the West Coast, I think, that kind of, in some instances, can protect premise owners and also large corporations, which make it important for I think the
Yeah.
person to
And
have
I think too,
detail
yeah, I
oriented.
think too, there's a couple of really important things to notice here. Like so many people think they get a slip and fall and then they call us and they, hey, I heard somebody got $1 million settlement from falling on their butt. I'm going to be candid with you. Like that ain't $1 million case. It's just not. If you fall down and get a little bruise, that's not a million. It's not even a $10,000 case. But you still get something maybe. But in order to get a real settlement, you need to have real injuries. I mean, that's just real. The second thing to realize too is in these slip and falls, even if it is your fault, 100%, you're just not paying attention. You fall on your face. Um, a lot of places, not every place, but a lot of places have on their insurance policy a thing called a no fault med pay, meaning if you're at their store and you fall down and even if it's your fault, they might even have some coverage to help pay your medical bills. You're not going to get a settlement, but it might help pay your medical bills. Now, most people don't take advantage of that because they're too embarrassed or they don't want to ask about it. But, anyways, kind of a secret little thing that you're not going to get a settlement, but hey, at least you're not going to be stuck with a lot of bills a lot of places. So, something else to just keep in mind called no fault med pay.
Yeah,
That's
I
they're not
think that
accepting liability. They're not saying, okay, it's not our fault, but we have a little bit of coverage to help pay you go to the doctor or whatever.
and I think that kind of goes exactly as to why you should always, exactly what you were saying, why you should always, always, always report these kind of situations.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I know we were talking about some of these like private areas. What about public and like government? I know those might be a little different. They might operate under a different kind of set of rules. How would you kind of approach maybe something like that? Let's say a public park,
Yeah,
or kind of like a city hall or a government building, where something
yeah.
do they kind of operate under different rules?
I mean, it's all, yeah, yes and no. I mean, it's all the same. You got to prove that they knew or should have known. You got to prove that, they had time to fix it. This could be ice. And it can't be an act of God either. Like, just because it snows and there's snow on the sidewalk, and you slip, you're like, that doesn't mean the government needs sued. Um, but should they fix it? They know people, yes. Do they have reasonable time to fix it? Yes. Um, but anyways, there's lots of things like that. But outside, I mean, is the sidewalk busted like this? And well, yeah, but did you know about that? How many times have you walked on the sidewalk before? This is your 10th. You do this every day. So you knew about that. Now contributory negligence comes into effect, right? Um, but if you're suing the federal government, you're going federal law, which is anyways, whole different type of attorney, a whole different type of rules. That makes even more attorneys like me not want to touch those cases. They get tricky. So, anyways, so I mean, yeah, call. We'll give you. Anyways, there's lots of things with these. So, um, but yeah, just make sure. Don't just call any personal injury attorney. Look at their website. Make sure they take these, because you're going to get a lot more no's than yeses. But don't give up, right? Because if you really have a case and you're really injured, keep calling around. You'll find an attorney that will help you. Um, and but there's lots of attorneys are like, nope, don't do that, nope, and they'll pretend like they'll be nice, and I'm just being candid, like we do the same thing. Oh yeah, let me listen. Oh sorry, we're too busy. But frankly, most attorneys don't want these cases. They're hard. Um, but yeah, we've had some pretty good success with them. So
And what do you feel like makes a good attorney, one who can handle these cases versus someone who just takes a bunch of car accident cases that they know are going to settle, that they know are layups?
yeah,
How do you identify that attorney who's just
yeah,
one who takes the settlement case versus the good quality attorney who's going to be able to investigate, gather the evidence, and take my case
yeah.
to the finish line
Yeah,
with
no,
the
that's a
slip
great
and
question.
fall case, I mean.
Yeah. I think ask them. Just say, hey, have you guys ever had a case against this store? Have you guys ever had a case like can you tell me what happened the last few times you helped somebody in this similar situation? Now, if they can't give you an answer, that doesn't mean they're bad, but it tells you they don't have experience with that same store. But what it could do, then say, okay, well, if you haven't done this, well, what are you going to do to figure this out? Because frankly, there's cases I don't have a clue how to do because these slip and falls are different, right? Everyone's so different. Um, but I'm going to figure it out. I mean, that's just me. That's my nature. That's our law firm. That's our paralegals. Like but you got to make sure that your attorney either knows how to do it or is willing to do it because these are not easy cases. So if you get the impression that your attorney is there to, I'm going to do the bare minimum. Let me see if they said make an offer. If not, I'm just going to release you. You don't want that attorney. Um, But you also want somebody candid with you. If you have an attorney like, oh yeah, I'll get you $500,000. You have a bruise on your tailbone. Like the guy's lying to you. Either that or he's a magician. And I wish you would teach me those tricks. I don't know how to do that. Like it's not how it works, not in my world at least. And so you want somebody candid, you want somebody who's going to work for you and somebody who's done this or willing to at least figure it out.
That was great, and that kind of leads on to my final question here. Kind of your consultation process. Let's say someone comes to you with some type of slip and fall case. How do you kind of walk them through the consultation process, and how do you maybe how do you kind of approach both scenarios? One scenario where you kind of have to let the client know that maybe this might not be something that can be pursued, and the other scenario where you kind of let them know that this will be a fight, but I'm the guy to do it.
Yeah,
I'm the
yeah,
guy to gather the evidence, and I'm the guy that, how do you
yeah.
approach those consultations? One, being very bluntly honest, and two, being excited to genuinely help this case.
Yeah. I know every firm probably approaches a little bit different, but our firm, we try to be so candid with our clients because we're on a team, right? I tell my if I have a client who comes in and they're just like kind of a pain, I just tell them like, hey, we got to figure out real quick, do you want me to represent you or not? Because if you hate me, I'm gonna hate you, and then we're gonna hate each other, and this is gonna be terrible. Now, if you're just trying to put on a face to be a pain, but I don't care. But like honestly, like we're on a team, and if we're not going to work together, like get somebody else. So anyways, for us, we got to make sure we're on a team. But I tell them like, but look, these are hard. Here's what we're going to have to figure out, and if we don't get this information, we cannot help you. And so for us, we make sure like, look, if we can't find insurance, there's nothing we can do. If we can't get video footage of this, probably not going to be able to help you. So for us, we try to be super candid, try to lay it out, and a lot of times we have to tell them like, look, today's day one. We're getting the basic information. We're happy to help you, but in order to have a case, we need X, 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 and X. And if we can't together come up with that stuff, and then that way we work together as a team. And our obviously we have a lot of staff that can help find this stuff, but a lot of it we have to put back on the client too and be like, hey, this is your landlord. I'm going to need you to go and get that, from him or strategy, anyways. So there's a lot of stuff we do, but ultimately a lot of times with these slip and falls, we just tell them like, look, we're going to do our best, but to make this work, we're going to need these few things still. And if we can't get that, I mean, between you and I today, probably won't be a case a week from now, but let's see what we can get and let's try. So I think that's the difference from our firm and some others is, we're willing to at least try, do our best, but we're also very candid. When we can't get that information, we'll sit down with them and be like, look, I don't think you have a chance. You're going to waste 100 hours of your life, and so we're just pretty candid with people. So anyways,
Right. And
yeah,
I think,
yeah,
yeah, being an attorney requires, a high level of what I would assume is customer service, right? I'm sure,
yeah,
Mr. Rich,
yeah,
you didn't imagine yourself being a customer service rep almost for your entire life. But I think a big thing that comes with having an attorney that you feel comfortable with is exactly what Mr. Ritchie said, being candid, being honest, having integrity, and just being upfront with the client, letting them know whether they believe this is that slam dunk case. Every attorney who you take a case to might tell you, this is a slam dunk, sign with me. The difference that separates, I think, a good attorney is the honesty and the integrity that they'll give you during the consultation process. If you do find an attorney that is excited to kind of just rip the case out of your hands and right into their firm, I think that's where you should start having a little bit of hesitancy. When you have a firm that practices in honesty, integrity, and just being candid with you off first consultation, I think that's when you found the right law firm and you're probably in the right direction. If you do ever get injured in a slip and fall case, call 509-300-4701. Speak with Mr. Ritchie, speak with his amazingly talented team. They have Vanessa, Maria, Steve, Pedro. They have an extensive team out there of very talented attorneys, paralegals, intake specialists who can absolutely help you take your case from the initial investigation phase all the way out through settlement. Mr. Ritchie, thank you for taking the time with us and
yeah.
explaining the slip and fall process in Washington. Is there anything you would like to leave with the viewers in terms of slip and fall and
Yeah, I
letting
think the
them know?
biggest thing is just, I mean, just know they're tricky cases. They're not slam dunk cases. A lot of attorneys won't take them, but don't give up. Do your best. Like keep calm around. Um, but yeah, you'll find somebody to help you if you have a legit case. But they take a lot of work. They are harder than car accidents for sure. But we've had great success with them too. So, anyways, feel free to call us. Personal injury attorneys, we're like a team member with you, right? Don't be afraid to call. Like, we don't get paid unless you get paid, and so like, don't be nervous or afraid or scared to call an attorney. Like honestly, we want you to call us because we want a case. We want to help you. So don't ever be like intimidated or scared. We're begging for you to call us. Like honestly, like that's what we want is more clients. But we can't help unless you call. But it's not scary. In fact, we want to form that partnership with people. So if you're hurt, yeah, call an attorney, get them to help you. That's what we do every single day.
Absolutely, Mr. Rich. You couldn't have said it any better. At the end of the day, people, the goal is to help you guys. The goal is to make you guys feel more comfortable, protect yourself and your family, right? If you can't work, if you can't provide, someone's going to have to pay for that, and that should definitely not be you. So again, just go ahead and call the number 509-300-4701. Get in contact directly with Mr. Ritchie and his fantastic team who has handled hundreds of slip and fall car accidents, over 174 million in settlements. Just absolutely phenomenal work that they're doing down there. Again, thank you, Mr. Ritchie, for joining
And no,
us.
it's fun. Always fun. Yeah, no, honestly, love to talk about car accidents and injuries. That's what I do. So, anyways, call if you have questions. Let's help you guys out.
Thank you so much, sir, and
And
we'll
thanks,
see
Alan.
you next week.
All right, perfect, man.